Imagine driving through the city streets, lost in your own thoughts, when something unusual catches your eye. 4 kids walking with a woman? No big deal, right? Until you realize each one of them is identical to you. Same eyes, same features, almost like looking into a mirror. What would you do? Would you ignore it? Or would you pursue the answer that could change your life forever? Get ready for a story full of twists, secrets from the past, and an unexpected encounter with destiny. Is Victor Lacerda, a multimillionaire who has always had everything at his fingertips, prepared to face what really matters? You won't believe what's coming. Stay until the end, because nothing is as it seems. The roar of the Phoenix's engine resonated through the busy streets of Nova Aurora, and Victor Lacerda, in his impeccable suit and sunglasses, seemed oblivious to the urban hustle and bustle. While his right hand controlled the steering wheel, his left adjusted the volume of an important call in the car's integrated system. "Yes, transfer the funds to the main account. I want this resolved today," he ordered, with a tone that left no room for questions. However, his mind wandered away, tired of the luxurious routine and the people who always seemed to want something from him. He ignored the golden glow of the sun, reflecting off the surrounding skyscrapers, just as he ignored the small details of life. But destiny always finds ways to manifest itself in the most unexpected moments. When Victor stopped at an intersection, something caught his attention. On the sidewalk, a woman hurriedly crossed holding the hands of 4 children. At first, it was just another ordinary moment in the city. But then he realized, his eyes fixed on the children's faces. It was like looking into a mirror. He blinked a few times, as if the sun was tricking his vision. The features, the shape of the faces, even the intense gaze of the children were strangely familiar. Victor's heart raced. "It can't be," he murmured, feeling the tension in his hands as he gripped the steering wheel. The woman, without realizing the impact she was causing, continued her crossing to the opposite sidewalk. Victor, unable to look away, watched as she bent down to adjust the coat of one of the little ones. He needed answers. Who are these children? He thought, almost forgetting that he was in traffic. Impulsive as he was, Victor turned the steering wheel, making a sharp turn, ignoring the angry horns around him. He stopped the car a few meters away and hurriedly got out. The woman noticed his approach and instinctively put her arms in front of the children, protecting them. "I'm sorry, but I have to ask," Victor said, his voice deep but firm. "These kids, who are they?" The woman stared at him with sharp, defiant eyes. There was something in Victor's tone that seemed accusatory, and she didn't like it. "They are my children," she replied without hesitation as she shook one of the children's hands. "And what does this have to do with you?" Victor took a step back, but he couldn't let it pass. "They are a lot like me. This can't just be a coincidence." He bent down, trying to meet the eyes of one of the children, who was looking at him curiously. "What's your name, boy?" Before he could get a response, the woman stood up abruptly. "I said they are my children, and that's all you need to know." His voice was firm, but there was a tremor in it, something Victor noticed. Still, he wasn't ready to give up. "Look, I'm not here to cause trouble," he insisted, "but it is impossible to ignore the obvious. They have something of me." The woman took a deep breath, looking away for a moment. "Sir, I don't know who you are, but I don't owe anyone an explanation. Leave me alone." His response was harsh, but Victor couldn't take his eyes off the children. That feeling, that inexplicable connection grew inside him like a flame. When she started to walk away, Victor took a few steps, hesitating. The children laughed and talked as they followed their mother, oblivious to the tension. But he knew he needed to do something. Back in the car, Victor sat, staring at the steering wheel, his mind full of questions. The feeling that his life was about to change overwhelmed him. He started the engine again, but this time not to escape that scene. I wouldn't give up on finding out the truth. Victor couldn't stay away for long. Something about that woman and the children continued to disturb him. The next day, he met her again, almost as if fate was determined not to let him get away from that strange coincidence. It was a small cafe in a residential neighborhood where she was sitting with the children around, trying to keep them occupied while drinking a coffee. He entered and approached cautiously. "We need to talk." His voice was low, but it carried an urgency that she couldn't ignore. Elisa looked up in surprise, but her expression quickly hardened. "I told you, I have nothing to talk to you about." She tried to remain calm as one of the little ones tugged on her sleeve, asking for attention. "Please," Victor insisted, pulling out a chair and sitting down without waiting for permission. "I'm not leaving until you explain to me what's going on." She took a deep breath, looking at the children, who were now distracted by a little game. Finally, she gave in. "He is well. Let's talk. But do it quickly. Who is their father?" Victor was direct, staring at her with intensity. Elisa hesitated, her eyes traveling quickly between the children and Victor. "They have something of me. It's impossible to deny." "They don't have a father," she finally replied, her voice filled with a bitterness that Victor couldn't ignore. "I raised them myself, and it was my choice." Victor frowned suspiciously. "Are you trying to say they were born out of nowhere? It doesn't make sense." Elisa clenched her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. "If you want to know that much, fine." She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. 5 years ago, I decided to undergo artificial insemination. It was my only way. I came to this country with nothing, no one, and I wanted a family. I used the little money I had for this." The revelation left him stunned for a moment. He hadn't expected this explanation, but something still didn't make sense. "And how does that involve me?" he asked. "I didn't know who the donor would be," Elisa admitted, her voice barely above a whisper now. The clinic guaranteed complete anonymity. "It was a difficult decision, but it was the only way I could have my children." Victor sat back in his chair, the pieces beginning to come together in his mind. Years ago, when he was not yet the tycoon he was today, he had experienced financial difficulties. In an act of desperation, he donated sperm to a fertility clinic in exchange for money. "That can't be true," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "Are you saying they are your children?" added Elisa with a challenging look. "It seems fate has a cruel sense of humor." Victor remained silent, staring at the children. Now, more than ever, he saw his own reflection in those little faces. And for the first time in years, he felt the weight of a responsibility he never imagined he would carry. Victor drove in silence through the wide avenues of Nova Aurora. On the next bench, Elisa observed the landscape, trying to hide her uneasiness. In the back seat, the children were silent, something rare, as if they were sensing the tension between the adults. The Alta Vista mansion appeared on the horizon, a monument of luxury and opulence, surrounded by impeccable gardens. Elisa couldn't help but look surprised, even though she tried to appear indifferent. "Why did you bring us here?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. "My grandmother needs to meet them," Victor replied, with a firmness that left no room for arguments. He stopped the car in front of the gates, which opened automatically, revealing the grandeur of the place. "She deserves to know." Elisa didn't respond, but squeezed one of her children's hands as if seeking comfort. Upon entering the mansion, they were greeted by the soft sound of classical music and the scent of fresh flowers. In the center of the vast hall, Maria Lacerda was waiting for them, sitting in a leather armchair, with an air of serenity that seemed to transcend time. "Victor," she said with a warm smile, her eyes shining at the sight of her grandson. "Are these the children?" He nodded, approaching. "Yes, Grandma, I need you to know them. And also, this is Elisa." Maria stood up with effort, leaning on her cane, but her smile never wavered. "Come here, little ones," he said softly. The children hesitated, but, encouraged by their grandmother's calm gaze, they approached. She bent down slightly, examining each little face carefully, while the little ones watched her curiously. "They have your eyes, Victor," she commented, smiling at her grandson. "But I see something more in them, something that perhaps you still don't see." Victor frowned. "What do you mean by that?" Maria looked at Elisa, who remained in the background, visibly uncomfortable. "You have always been so blind to what really matters, my grandson. But these children, they will open your eyes to what is essential." Elisa took a step forward, her expression unreadable. "I don't think we can stay," she said, trying to sound confident. "We don't want to get in the way." "Bullshit," Maria replied firmly. "This is my grandchildren's house. And if you allow me to say so, Elisa, it's yours now too." Victor remained silent, observing the scene. For the first time, he felt something beyond obligation. It was an unfamiliar heat, almost uncomfortable, but undeniably present. And even though he didn't fully understand, he knew that something in his life was changing. The Alta Vista mansion seemed more alive than ever, with children's laughter echoing through the halls. Victor watched them play in the garden, while Elisa and Maria talked in the living room. He felt for the first time in years that something other than business occupied his thoughts. However, this brief moment of peace was interrupted. Helena Duarte, Victor's fiancée, entered the main door like a hurricane. Her high heels clicked on the marble, and her gaze was as sharp as a blade. "Victor!" he called, his voice full of authority. "Who is this woman, and why are these children here?" Elisa, who was holding a cup of tea, froze in place. Maria, on the other hand, showed no surprise. "Looks like we have company, Victor," she said in a neutral tone as Helena approached. "Helena, you shouldn't be here today," Victor replied, trying to maintain control. He placed himself between her and Elisa, but Helena didn't back away. His gaze quickly moved to the children, who were now beside their mother. "Are these your children?" she asked in disbelief. His voice carried a mixture of shock and disdain. "They look so much like you that it's impossible to deny." "It's a long story," Victor began, but Helena interrupted him. "I don't believe it. Victor, who is this woman?" Helena turned to Elisa with an accusing expression. "And why are you here, invading our lives?" Elisa, until then silent, took a step forward. "I'm Elisa, and these are the children. If that's a problem for you, we can leave." His voice was firm, but his posture revealed the tension he felt. Before Helena could respond, Maria raised her hand, silencing the room. "Helena, there is something you need to know. Something Victor didn't tell you." His eyes fixed on his grandson, who looked away. "Grandma, please." Victor tried, but Maria didn't let herself stop. "Victor underwent surgery years ago, Helena, a vasectomy. He cannot have biological children." The revelation was like thunder in the room. Victor swallowed hard, while Helena was speechless, his face contorted in disbelief. "That can't be true," she exclaimed. "You're lying, Maria. These children have to be his." "Elisa performed an insemination using the sperm that Victor donated years ago," Maria explained, in a tone that mixed severity and compassion. "These children are his, yes, but not in the way you think." Helena stepped back, her eyes flashing with anger and humiliation. "This is absurd," he muttered. "I can't believe you're destroying our relationship because of this woman." "Helena, this is over," Victor said, his voice firm but with an evident weight. "You have no place in my life if you cannot accept this truth. Elisa and the children are part of me now, and I'm not going back." Helena gave Elisa one last look of contempt and left abruptly, leaving a tense silence in the air. Maria, with a heavy sigh, looked at Victor. "You made the right choice, my grandson. But now it's time to make more than choices. It's time to act." Victor nodded, feeling the weight of his grandmother's words. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he also knew he was no longer alone. The morning sun streamed through the large windows of the Alta Vista mansion, illuminating the main hall with a soft golden light. Victor was sitting at the breakfast table, watching Elisa as she prepared a dish for the children. The scene felt surreal to him, like it was a glimpse of something he never knew he needed. "Elisa," he called, his voice soft but full of emotion. She looked up, surprised by the tone he used. "I need you to know I've never been so lost as I have been these last few days. But at the same time, I've never felt so sure about something." She didn't respond right away, but her expression softened. Victor approached, staying a few steps away. "I'm not perfect. I never have been. I made choices in the past that took me away from anything resembling love or family. But you showed me that there is still time to be someone better." Elisa looked down for a moment, trying to process his words. "Victor, it's not that simple. It's not enough to say you want to change. You have to prove it, day after day. Not for me, but for these children. They deserve stability, something you may not be ready to give yet." Victor nodded slowly, recognizing the truth in what she said. But then he turned to the children, who were playing on the rug near the fireplace. He walked over and knelt before them, his voice cracking a little as he tried to speak. "I know I haven't been here before," he began, looking at each of the little ones. "But I promise that from now on, I will do my best to be the father you deserve. I will be here at all times, big or small." The children, still too young to fully understand the depth of his words, instinctively smiled and hugged him. Victor felt the warmth of those little arms, and for the first time in a long time, tears ran down his face. Later that same day, as Elisa watched the children running around the garden, Victor approached again. "I want you to stay here. I want this to be more than a house. I want it to be a home for you." Elisa looked at him, her eyes shining with conflicting emotions. "And you? Are you ready to be part of this home? Because I can't do this alone." Victor held her hands, his gaze fixed on hers. "Yes, I'm ready to start again. I'm ready to build something real. For you. For them." The following week, an intimate wedding was celebrated in the gardens of the Alta Vista mansion. Victor and Elisa exchanged vows in front of the children and Maria, who watched with a proud smile. Elisa's words echoed in the ears of everyone present. "True wealth is not in what we have, but in who we have by our side." A deal. As the children ran around the makeshift altar, laughing and celebrating, Victor realized that his life had found a new purpose. It wasn't the power or the luxury that mattered, but the simple moments and bonds he had finally learned to value. And with that, he knew that for the first time in his life, he was truly whole.